Welcome to the Everyone is a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
I'm 37?
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
Stick around.
Visit us at IHateCritics.net and everyoneIsaCriticPodcast.com. We're on Facebook at Everyone is a Critic. I have changed our Twitter and Instagram handles to Critics Pod. I hope you guys are okay. I didn't even think about asking until after I did it. I was like, that was kind of rude. I always have to think it out when I'm saying E1 is a
yeah.
And it was available, so that's easy enough. And so Critics Pod is our new handle, and it shouldn't affect what you have on your phones already if you have Instagram.
No, but we're going to go ahead and hold that against you because you didn't ask us. So.
Or on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. If you want to rate and review the show on iTunes, we'll read your review on the air. Also, if you subscribe, that helps us move up the charts. We're now the number 5th movie review podcast. We're slipping down the chart, so we need some more reviews.
What's the number 4? Only if you have it at the tip of your fingers.
Well, it's not the drunken one moved to number 3. No, they're 4 again. Geekverse, filmmakers, drinking bourbon, and us kind of move around between 3 and 5.
I see. So now I know my hit list for comments this week. Thank you.
But subscribing and reviewing helps us go up there, and also sharing the podcast with your friends and helping us grow. It helps us move up those charts as well. The best way to support us, though, is go to IHateCritics.net/Patreon. Then you can support the podcast by donating as little as $1 a month, and you'll get a credit on the show. There's related.
You get to tell us what to do.
Yeah, you get to tell us what to do. We've mentioned bonus episodes and then haven't delivered at all, so I apologize. What we're going to do for sure is a monthly Flick Chart only, Patreon only bonus podcast. You might throw it on Bandcamp or something where you can buy it. But if you're a Patreon supporter, you'll get it for free. I'm not sure how you'll get it for free, but I think I can put it on Patreon. And then we also owe, Jason's put together a podcast for us, so I was going to give this option out to him on the show. We can either break it out over the course, throw one of his movies with the Flick Charts and do it monthly, or still try to get together sometime in March or February and knock out, or late January, and knock out his full bonus podcast. And then I kind of want to do something with the VHS thing too, make that. So we have things in the works that we definitely. So if Jason, you want to spread it out over several podcasts, bonus podcasts, let us know, like one movie at a time with Flickchart, or if you want your own dedicated one, your call. And then other Patreon supporters, you kind of get to do the same thing if you want. Just up to, I think our movie star Dave Seaver came up with the Flickchart idea, and it's fun for us and it's easy, and we can deliver on it without too much work. This episode is a bonus podcast where we're just going to talk about the sexual assault cases in Hollywood. So,
Oh, yeah. Well, that could take up an hour.
which is why we haven't touched it. For all of you wondering,
Top 5 sexual harassment
How are you
cases.
feeling about American Beauty now, Bob? Just kidding.
I mean, that's the thing. How do you feel about Good Will Hunting, Pulp Fiction? It's all of it's. I'm not feeling any different about that. It's kind of stuff that I don't want to say we knew, but we know that shit's going on, just not necessarily with those. Well, at least not Kevin Spacey per se. But there's just a reason we haven't talked about it, because we could go on forever. And
He molested Richard Dreyfuss's son
Yeah.
while Richard Dreyfuss was in the room. Like, what the hell?
yeah, it's
I mean, that is blatant. That is like,
And then the way he tried to get away from it was coming out as gay.
oh God, yeah, that was ugly. That's just ugly.
And that's just one of these billion stories going on right now. And it's only going to get worse, and it's going to spread across. I mean, hopefully it gets into the everyday world, because I think we've all kind of seen it on some sort of level.
Like, I don't take any pleasure in this.
Oh, no.
I want people to know, because people know that about my feelings about Kevin Spacey's work over the past decade and a half. I didn't think it was very good, but that was not a reflection on my opinion of the man. I had no real opinion of the man. I didn't know anything about him personally. I've never known anything about him personally until now, and I wish I didn't know.
What I guess for me,
in part,
like what Sean said, I'm not taking pleasure in it, but at the same time, these people thought it was okay. You know, it wasn't like they knew they were doing something wrong. They actually, specifically Harvey Weinstein, thought it was okay. And you're seeing that start to maybe the light bulb click on, okay, I can't do this. And that's kind of the only thing I'm looking forward to that hopefully will happen. But I don't know.
It's weird. We're in a weird space, like when you're trying to deal with someone's art and someone as a person. Because I know there are people out there who still love Braveheart. You know, they appreciate Braveheart, and you have to equate that then with Mel Gibson as a man. Like, we've got Daddy's Home 2 coming out next week with Mel Gibson, and I still quarrel with myself over trying to separate the man from the performance, because he's a terrible man who might be able to still give a good performance, and it's weird. It's a weird space to be in.
Well, and it's also he's a terrible man. Part of him is a terrible person. Then there's always the good parts to everybody. So and we're only subject to certain. I mean, it's a weird. You're right. There's just so many things that, like, for one, Mel Gibson doesn't bother me as much as someone else, and I think we all have that, where there's somebody we'll hold on to as much as we don't want to. Casey Affleck, for example. Mm-hmm. It makes it hard, and that's not. And I'm not complaining. I'm not a victim by any means. That's not what I'm trying to get at. It just makes. I'm doing my best to try to separate all that whenever I.
You want to be aware, and you want to have people be aware, and you don't want to necessarily associate yourself with something that you don't like. You can't properly be associated with. Like, I love the work of Woody Allen. I don't know anything about what happened with Woody Allen. I mean, he married that girl. He's still married to that girl. Is that what or was there more to it that I don't know about?
There's another one.
Was there another?
Well.
Okay, so I don't know.
But again, it's all we'll never know.
Right.
But that doesn't make any Hall any less good, or I mean, the art is the art. The personal is and but he's one I have a harder time separating than it's just something that started out as a stupid joke. I was gonna do
no, it goes to show you, though. I mean, just careful about idolization, and it was a hard lesson of mine to learn through the guise of baseball when you started to learn that XYZ baseball player was roided up to their eyeballs and hitting 500-foot blasts, and I started to actually understand. Yeah, it shows, doesn't it? No, what I started to understand, though, was that you have to separate entertainment and heroes and whatnot from what you see and reality. I did the same thing with Michael Jackson and anyone else. We don't know these people personally, so you can still appreciate their art while not necessarily idolizing them as a person. And sometimes you can know enough to go to the point of saying, like, I'm not going to support their work because I know that they're not paying for it, so to speak. Like Roman Polanski, for example, if he did what he's accused of doing, he's still hanging out in Europe to avoid being arrested. That's, if he doesn't have anything to hide, then why not come back? You know what I'm saying? So do I choose to not support Roman Polanski's work because of that? I don't know. I watched Rosemary's Baby about 2 months ago.
Well, it gets to another like odd aspect of this is like, when can you forgive somebody? Like, there's this guy on YouTube who I really like a lot. This guy named Adam Blampier. He's a very entertaining, very funny guy who just was kind of had to give up his job because he allowed the fame to get to him too much, and he was hitting on girls online and asking them for photos and cheating on his girlfriend, and he admitted it all. At what point is it okay for me to go, well, all right, he's apologized, we can welcome him back now? At what point is it okay to say that somebody's learned their lesson? I mean, I don't know what is Casey Affleck accused of doing? I don't know.
Well, he settled. When they were doing that weird Joaquin Phoenix movie where they were all drugged up and stuff. I think the lines got blurred, and he isn't. According to him, his intentions were different than it. But apparently, he was. I don't know if assaulting is the right word, but he was definitely harassing two women he worked with, and he agreed to it. They did a settlement. Now nobody can talk about it. So all we're left with is he won an Oscar. Let's attack him. And it's not. I'm not defending him by any means.
No.
I don't know. But
at what point are you allowed to go, okay, well, we're okay with Casey Affleck again? Ever? Is it ever going to be okay? Or
I don't know. It's hard because famous people don't go to jail. Like
that's true.
If you know Joe Q Quad Cities that would do the same thing in their job, they're going to jail for harassment, assault, what have you. Kevin Spacey's probably not going to jail, right? I mean,
usually a lot of those
it depends.
statutes of
London
limitation
has something on him that they might be able to actually prosecute, from what I've read.
And some of these things, like really harassment's not necessarily a jailable offense. It's just something inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, but I'm glad it's talked about. But at some point, I mean, there is good in everybody too. We don't, it's hard to, like what Dustin Hoffman did or is accused of doing, creepy, but not really illegal. I don't know. It's just it's a mess. And really the bottom line is this isn't how you treat people. And I'm hoping that, I
think, Bob, we can all learn a lesson from Vice President Mike Pence and just never be alone with a woman who isn't your wife. I mean, really, that's just the... I'm being sarcastic.
Did you see the Saturday Night Live? He was in the shower with his clothes on. And Trump was like, or Alec Baldwin was like, why are you wearing your suit? I'm not married to the water.
He's a never nude.
Is Baldwin another one? That's what I'm worried. That's what, not worried about, but I'm watching it and is he next? Because that's what Rose McGowan says.
Well, he could be, but what he said was, I mean, basically, when you're commenting on it, we're not playing that. This literally was going to be a 5-minute joke, and then we're going to move on to the podcast, and then we ended up going. But you could probably cut something I said on accident, make it look like I'm defending Casey Affleck.
Yeah.
And he's trying to do it on Twitter. And it comes off as shaming the victim. And I don't think that was his intent. Now, there could be more. He could be one of those guys. And I wouldn't be surprised, personally. I mean, sometimes they think they're flirting. They think it's okay, And that's, I just kind of hope we keep working in the right direction. And that's kind of the only good thing that can come of all this. And I don't know. I'm sorry.
No sorrow needed.
Trailers this week.
Oh, yeah, movie stuff. That's what this is about.
This is movie stuff. In the Fade.
In the Fade. Doesn't this look awesome?
Yes.
Diane Kruger looks pretty amazing in this. Just the trailer, she was deeply affecting. I can't wait to see the actual movie.
Yeah, where's this come from? I mean, out of nowhere, and then it's got good...
It was at Cannes.
Okay.
And she won an award there, but I think people just tend to ignore European releases.
And Diane Kruger's been an actress that's been around for a long time and never really been involved in projects of prestige quality. I'm just going to say that because it lumps a lot of the movies that she's done in America into one category, Bruckheimer type stuff. And this one looks unbelievable. I mean, at first I wasn't sure if I was watching the right trailer.
Yeah.
Because they started speaking in German, I think, is the predominant language in this trailer. I'm not 100% sure. It could be Turkish as well. Point being, I didn't know I was watching the right trailer, and then I realized, I see that this is a European film. Oh, okay. But it looks explosive and full of thoughts of revenge and a bit of a mystery and a thriller, all wrapped into one very good-looking movie.
Very uniquely styled from the trailer, obviously. It looks very like it's going to be a very different-looking movie as well.
Yeah, different and unique were what I took away from it. And the performance, obviously, she looked amazing. But it looks like something we haven't seen before. And, despite, how we described it, sure, we've seen movies with revenge. But this just has its own unique feel to it that it really is appealing to me. A24, A Prayer Before Dawn.
That looks pretty awesome. Like a classically kind of A24 sort of movie.
Yeah, it kind of makes me like that. Was it Warrior? If like A24 had done that, which I liked that movie. I know Sean wasn't as big a fan, but I don't think he hated it either.
No,
Just
I
kind
didn't
of neither
hate
here
it.
nor there.
But this has a Bronson feel to it.
Yeah.
Which I really love that movie a lot.
I couldn't quite tell exactly what was going on here, and then by the end of the trailer, I was thinking, it's like A24 does Rocky or something, because they couldn't just do straightforward.
Rocky was done right.
What I mean by this, I knew if I said Rocky, that I would be stepping on hollowed ground and have to tread lightly. But
That's why I said Warrior.
I haven't seen Warrior, so I don't have that perspective. But I'm thinking of something that is a fighter movie.
You feel like you're going to be. You almost feel like you're in the ring with them. Just from the trailer, you feel like you're being punched with them, and it almost looks like maybe they really were fighting.
Well, yeah, one of the critic comments within the trailer is talking about how physical of a movie it was, and you can tell just by watching it. A brutish physical film that will make you feel probably exhausted by the end of it.
That's kind of what the Bronson comparison is for me, is that film is so incredibly visceral. It's like a very physical movie, and that's kind of the same feel here.
That's one that it's been sitting in my Netflix queue since I've had Netflix available.
Well, if this ever comes to a theater,
there you go.
We'll find a reason to watch this movie. And with that, we'll move on to our movies this week. Nothing really came out.
How much was the box office this week?
121.
Wow, that's 10
that
million
sound
higher
right?
than the projection.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Because I'd heard the projection on Friday, I think, was 111.
121. Yeah. And already made 100 million domestic or over internationally the week before.
Wow, I never would have guessed LBJ would make that.
Yeah. Rob Reiner is back.
LBJ is the superhero of our time. No.
Of course, we're talking about Thor, Ragnarok.
Yes.
I can finally say it right because I've seen it.
What were you saying before?
I just wasn't saying anything. You just had to finish. I'd start to say it, and Josh would have to finish it.
Just say Thor 3 and, violate my movie
Well, they said
principles.
Ragnarok enough in the movie that I got it.
Yes, Thor Ragnarok picking up in the wake of what took place in the other Marvel movies, mostly the Avengers: Age of Ultron. Thor has not been eager to go back to Asgard because he feels his return could lead to Ragnarok. And so he's been looking around for ways to prevent that from happening, specifically going after the guy who he thinks will be responsible for it. That's where we begin the movie, is he's seemingly captured by that guy, and it leads to one hell of an awesome fight scene to begin a movie with. That was really fantastic. I love Chris Hemsworth. His comedy chops just really getting very, very strong. I really enjoyed that scene. I enjoyed this entire movie. I didn't love this movie. I thought it spun its wheels a lot. Like once it gets to the fighting planet, Jeff Goldblum's planet, I thought, like, okay, I know what you're doing here. You're trying to pad this movie out a little bit. Spinning its wheels, but it was fun spinning its wheels. It's a very funny movie. Chris Hemsworth, terrific. I mean, I just think he just nailed it. This is the most comfortable he's been in this role by far. Tessa Thompson's pretty incredible. Ruffalo's great. This is the best Hulk they've done so far. I really like this movie a lot. I don't understand the rapturous praise. It's kind of, I feel a little bit like a sort of a Mad Max sort of thing where people are just kind of loving this a little bit more than they should. But I like it a lot. It's a very good movie. It's not Wonder Woman or even Spider-Man for my taste, but it's good. It's very funny.
Funny is the one thing that I would take away from this the most. Slightly under that level would be the style of the film. What we see in the trailers and the marketing is this very colorful, very weird, offbeat film, and it really does play to that, which is a nice direct contrast from the first two Thor films. Not that I don't like the first Thor. I do. I like Kenneth Branagh's royal themes and Shakespearean themes playing throughout the film. The second one's a very dour film that I didn't like, and it's my least favorite Marvel movie. But then this one has such an air of freshness to it, and it's not executed perfectly. There are some things that are clearly missing here, such as the Warriors 3. We are meant to care about them in the first two films. We're talking about Volstagg and Hogun and Fandral, as well as the warrior Sif, the female warrior who is concerned that Thor will fall in love with Jane Foster and she's going to lose her chance forever. First of all, where's Sif? Sif is not in this movie. I kept racking my brain. I watched Thor: The Dark World a couple months ago. Did she die in that movie? No.
She wasn't she in one of the post credit scenes?
She was, and it was after
Guardians,
where she saw the Collector, and with Volstagg took the Tesseract or whatever thing that they were doing there.
I believe they referenced something else that she was going to do, though. I believe.
If that's the case, I would have to go back and look at that. What I can say, though, is that something happens in this film to the Warriors 3, and it's not necessarily like that far into the film, okay? So consider that, and then consider the fact that Thor doesn't mention them at all. His best friends are not mentioned. And it just kind of rubs me the wrong way that we're meant to care about those characters, and they're kind of thrown to the side. And their name, like Ray Stevenson plays Volstagg, Zachary Levi is playing Fandral. They're people that we know, the faces that we know. Besides that, though, it's a fun movie. They don't necessarily spend enough time on the planet Sakaar, and the reason I say that is the Planet Hulk storyline that they were supposed to inject into Ragnarok is a really neat storyline with a lot of interesting characters that they pretty much consolidate into the one character of Krang or Krang, or I can't remember the rock monster's name, voiced by Taika Waititi, the director. Great character, loved him. But they're combining a lot of the personalities from Planet Hulk stuff into this one guy. There's a little Easter egg for fans of the comics. If you look at the tower on Sakaar, there's molded statues or whatnot, or faces, kind of like a Mount Rushmore type thing. And one of the faces is Hulk, but another one is the face of Beta Ray Bill, which I was really hoping to see in this movie, an alien that ends up being worthy of carrying a weapon of Asgard in the comics. A very cool character, an honorable alien, if you will. All of this being said, and getting my geek out, I did walk out of this very satisfied. Not a typical Marvel film, despite some of the typical tropes. I sure as hell enjoyed myself.
I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I didn't. I took my son and my daughter, and my son loved it. Now, Iron Man was his guy forever. Now he's like, in the middle of the movie, Thor is my favorite now, then Captain America, then Iron Man. And then he's still going on the list. I'm like, shut up. We're in the theater. Quit kicking the guy in front of you. And then my daughter is going, can we leave now? Can we leave? And she wanted to see it. We specifically waited for her to have an opening to go see it, and she did not like it. It was fine. Thor wasn't Star-Lord until this movie, and Hulk wasn't Drax until this movie, and now they're doing those characters in this movie, and it's fine as a standalone, but in the universe, it's just like the Hulk's a completely different Hulk than he's ever been, and I don't care. I mean, I'm really not that invested enough to care, but it did kind of take me out of it a little bit to the point where it was just, it was kind of fun, and it kind of begins and ends at that word for me.
You mentioned the Hulk thing. I mean, there's a bit at the end that is definitely lacking enough weight. A decision that Banner makes at the end of the movie that has really, I mean, it's not given hardly any weight in the thick of things. It doesn't even get mentioned again after it happens, which is
because he turned into a joke that you saw coming a mile away when he jumped. I don't want to spoil it, but and that was the other thing. It's funny, but I felt like I knew every joke before they said it. I don't know if that it just kind of, it's not, I don't know. It was kind of like, which I guess I was like that with Nice Guys, but I laughed really hard whenever, I'm so used to Shane Black that I was used to the jokes, but I loved them. Here it was just more of I knew they were coming, and you could almost tell what they were going to say, but it didn't. It was still fun, but it just kind of, I guess I'm kind of saying what Sean said, but more negative. The hype definitely bothered me because I had to wait so long to see it, and it didn't live up to the hype for me by any means. But again, it's still I'll take Guardians 1 and 2 over this any day of the week, 2 or 3 times on Sunday.
Guardians 2 especially had some actual weight to it with what happens at the end of that film. I thought that had some actual genuine, drama to it. There's no real drama in this movie at all, other than we're supposed to feel something about the end of Asgard, but I mean, does it really matter? Because like they say in the movie, Asgard is where the people are. So the planet, losing the place doesn't seem to really matter to anybody, even though I felt like it should. This movie is probably it's really light. It's really light, and it's it's more of an episode in the Marvel universe than it is anything else. And we're talking about a movie that is essentially Thor. What is it? Ragnarok is basically the end of times in Asgard. Yeah. It's an apocalypse. We're talking about Thor apocalypse essentially, and it really doesn't feel like it has any weight. It certainly doesn't have the weight of an apocalypse.
And I ruined your Hulk point by saying they turned it into a joke, which is what they did. But that was a huge point that they could have made something out of, and they didn't.
I just don't understand why they have to have that in the first place.
Right.
What's the science behind that, Dr. Banner? You have to then become the Hulk forever after that?
Spoiler alert.
I haven't really revealed anything
about it. We don't actually know.
Yeah, we don't
true.
actually know, and I can't imagine they're going to do that.
They're toying with that for the other sequels, but still, it's toying.
But and then
just playing around here with something that should be big and dramatic.
But go ahead, you finish your point, Josh.
No, the idea of the apocalypse, it is too light for such a major word like apocalypse and the dour nature of it. But Hemsworth, in an interview this week that I read, he had a specific idea after hearing some of the negativity about the first 2 Thor films, and that he's too serious. And he's too regal, and the Dark World was too dour and dark, and that Thor is the one that doesn't necessarily fit within the mood of the Marvel films. So, okay, whatever the case may be. But as an actor, he took it upon himself to ask the writers, ask Kevin Feige, ask the director, this is what I think about the character as well. And so he's not... To me, that tells me good things about Hemsworth. He's invested in the character. He's invested in what the fans think, and therefore he might have had an influence on the reason why this film is as light as it is. But to speak to your idea of apocalypse, in a way, yes, it doesn't take itself seriously enough for being the end of an entire civilization, perhaps, right? But it's also this idea of the sins of the father and the sins of the son and whatnot coming around on each other. And that is a thematically large idea that's still in the line of Shakespeare from the first film. It's still a grand idea if you put it there. And of course, because I'm putting it there, I can understand that, and I buy it, and 17 films in, I'm cool with it. I understand what you're saying, though.
I think Hemsworth's been terrific in making this feel like an arc, like the growth of this character, the growth of Thor as a person. I honestly feel like this is the various influences of his life coming to bear on who he is in this movie. And I feel he's been very consistent in growing this character in this way. So I didn't have a problem with anything that he did. It's the overall lightness of the entire film that I feel just makes this feel like more of an episode than an actual movie.
Yeah, and that makes... he was hanging out with Tony Stark, so right. I get it. And I can't disagree with that, really. The Hulk, though, no. The whole arc there doesn't really make sense. He turned into my 3-year-old nephew. He just reminded me of my nephew the whole movie. Because of the way he talked. I'm not going to... Because I'm not invested enough to be like, he talked, I didn't like the way he talked. I don't... It really comes down to the light part, like Sean was saying, and I felt the same way with Civil War. I just didn't feel like it was. And I'm just wondering if the fact that we have all these characters, is that why it's coming off as light? Is the Infinity War going to be light? Because talk about characters. How do you do that?
Well, again, you've got to have stakes without having stakes, because it's been building to Infinity War for a decade, and it will be ostensibly a decade when Infinity War is released. So that has stakes, and I feel like that one will be true to the promise of all of these. But this needs to happen for that to happen. The end of this film, gosh, I don't think I can really say anything, but it's it wasn't what I expected. I expected it to have. It's fair to say it didn't have the lead-in that I expected to Infinity War, despite what you might stick around for.
The scenes in between the credits.
Yeah.
Scenes. I hated those. I was like, what is this? Give me something more than this. Nothing happens here.
My son, being a huge fan of Jeff Goldblum because of Ian Malcolm, was absolutely in stitches about the Grandmaster in this film, and I get it. It's a little odd that my son might love Jeff Goldblum as much as he does. What an odd dude. I should show him The Fly, then that'll end. But that was amusing enough because he's Goldbluming it up at all over the place. He's the perfect choice for that role. But I mean, we didn't even see his brother in the movie, and that was such a big tease that the Grandmaster is the brother of the Collector, Benicio del Toro's character from Guardians. I figured we'd see him at some point because we don't know where in the world the Collector is at this point.
I mean, I guess my favorite part would be the cameo.
Yeah, I knew that you would like that. I mean, I had no idea that was coming.
Was it just one cat? Was it just the one? It was
There's
two cameos.
three.
There's three.
Well, I saw.
See, I could only
noticed
recognize
two.
one of them.
I noticed
I
Sam
couldn't
Neill
recognize. I recognized him.
and Matt Damon.
And Matt
Liam
Damon,
Hemsworth playing.
Okay, I didn't recognize him.
And
Yeah.
he's not a person. He doesn't matter. I mean, really, how successful is he?
Well, he's been in an Independence Day movie and Hunger
Exactly.
Games.
He was one of the forgettable characters in the Hunger Games. Yes, you're correct.
The other Hemsworth.
David was fantastic. He was very funny. Very funny. We've not mentioned we mentioned the cameo. We've not even really mentioned the villain,
Yeah.
which is weird. Kate Blanchett is freaking awesome. She's such an awesome villain. She is so great. I love the look. I love the manner. I love the way she talked. I like that she had an actual a backstory that meant something. I dug that. I didn't know about it going in, so that helped me a lot. I had no idea how her relationship to Thor and his father. I loved finding out about that. So that was at least something had a little bit of weight to it, and I thought that at the very least she brought that to this movie. So she's great. I mean, like I said, I like a lot about this movie. I don't love it.
Yeah. I'm reticent to say more because we spent so much time on it, but if you guys remember Age of Ultron and Thor is having nightmares in that scene and he's seeing Heimdall with Heimdall's blind, can't see anything, and all these people are going through the depths of hell. Okay. Did you guys see hell in this movie? I mean, I know that there's the character that's, made of fire, and Surtur or whatever, but I was thinking, if it's the end of the world, then you're not just destroying something, then you're sending all of the citizens to hell and banishing Thor to hell. It's like a Jesus story, right?
I mean, I'm willing to infer that many people died and didn't make it off the planet.
Sure. Okay.
And maybe that's what he saw.
Yeah, that's a strong point. Those nightmares, maybe because it's a nightmare, but it just seemed like Ragnarok was a much darker idea than what they presented in this film.
But also he was working to prevent as much of it as he could. So maybe he did have an influence in saving more people than would have been saved.
That is a good point.
Yeah. We're all kind of saying the same thing, just with different tones. But yeah, I mean, at one point my son did he wants high five. I'm like halfway through the movie.
That's fantastic. I like that. Hey, my son had a joke about this movie. He said, the first two, I didn't like them as much, maybe because they were a little too low key.
Ah!
He came up with that joke all by himself.
And then Josh said high five.
I did immediately.
For those of you who don't know, Josh is big on puns.
Yes, he punished me.
Fuck you. Bad Mom's Christmas.
Yes, Bad Mom's Christmas. The Bad Moms crew of Mila Kunis, Kristen Bell, Catherine Hahn, doing a Christmas movie. Their mothers are visiting for Christmas. Christine Baranski, Susan Sarandon, and Cheryl Hines. Each of them come with their own baggage. Susan Sarandon doesn't even know it's Christmas. She just wants to borrow money. Cheryl Hines has boundary issues. She actually sits in the room and actually watches her daughter almost have sex with her husband and asks questions about their love life that are extraordinarily uncomfortable. And Christine Baranski is kind of this control freak Christmas nut who wants her daughter to be as much of a Christmas nut as she is. And so those are the modest conflicts, or what you might be able to call conflicts. There isn't really much of any genuine conflict in this movie. The movie doesn't have a center, really, because all these conflicts are very predictable and very easily solved. So what you're left with is a series of R-rated gags, and they're pretty funny R-rated gags, but that's all it is. And I kind of was hoping there would be something more to it. I was talking to somebody about it, and I was talking about comparing it to The Hangover. The Hangover doesn't have much to it, but at least The Search for Doug does give the movie a hanger to something to put the jokes on. It may not be all that particularly serious, but at least you have a central point to everything. It's going somewhere. This movie doesn't have a central point where it's going to. It's just a series of gags, and there's nothing holding them all together other than maybe Christmas, but that's a pretty thin gag, and it's also all very predictable. That said, I did laugh a lot. I mean, Catherine Hahn is incredible. She's a tremendously funny woman.
Yes, she is.
Second only to, I'd say, to Melissa McCarthy in the way she delivers a four-letter word. There's an art to that I keep trying to explain to people and people refuse to listen to, but it is an art form. Melissa McCarthy is the master of it, and Catherine Hahn is like right there second to her.
And The Rock's terrible at it. Go watch Baywatch.
He is really bad at it. Yeah, it does not sound natural to him at all.
Anyway, go back.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really funny things in here, but there really just isn't a center to this movie. So I don't know where I'm at on that. Like, I guess I can kind of recommend it as a series of gags, but it's not really a movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I mean, it's a sequel to a movie that surprised people, so they, on a relatively low budget, cashed in for number 2. So it sounds like it's kind of exactly what it should have been. It's not. I don't know. Clearly, I don't know. My wife and all her bad mom friends went and saw it. I don't know. And they all liked it.
Yeah.
My wife claims to really have locked onto the Mila Kunis storyline because that's her and her mom. She said it was way more over the top, but she kind of related to that the most. But it sounded like, I mean, I didn't see it. I was trying to get permission to go see it, so I didn't have to watch my niece and nephew this weekend. And then I said. Pulled up Sean's review, and I told her it was Sean's review, but she must not have picked up on that. I'm like, just read this. If this is bad, I get to go see it. If it's good, then I'll stay here and help watch the kids. She read it, she goes, did a guy write this? I was like, Sean wrote it. And then she goes, I mean, everything is true, but it was funny. And so I don't know. So I didn't get to go see it. LBJ,
yes. Rob Reiner is a strange kind of director because he's not technically proficient. His movies don't look good. He's got a good idea most of the time, but his movies tend not to look very. Am I wrong? Or
No,
I think you're right.
Start off with a bang. So,
but he's right. When they're good, it's because you're distracted by the dialogue or whatever, so you're not really picking up on
characters or a good story. He's good at that, and he's good at jokes. And when he tries to do something serious, it doesn't really hit very well because he's not very technically proficient, and that certainly comes through in this movie, which is a whole lot of darkness. I mean, he doesn't really light anything very well. I think is it just that people in the '60s didn't have well lit rooms? I don't know. It kind of comes off that way. Whether that's just a lack of technical proficiency or not, I don't know. Or if it's intentional, it's hard to say. The idea here is to tell the story of LBJ's reluctant presidency and almost how he backed into it, not wanting to do it. He was pretty happy as the Senate Majority Leader. He had a lot of power as the Senate Majority Leader, maybe more power than the president at the time. He accepts it. He accepts the vice presidency because he thinks he can make something of it and get ready for 1968 and trying to be a presidential candidate then. And really his whole career is based off of pragmatic decisions like that. And that leads you to the question of whether or not he was a great president or even a good man. And it's hard to say. I mean, he was a brave president at times. He was a president with some conviction. You couldn't predict what he was going to do. Bobby Kennedy was certain that Lyndon Johnson was going to kill civil rights, and then he backed it all the way in '64. He was certain that he wasn't going to follow up in the Great Society, and he did everything he could to follow up in the Great Society. There were a lot of people who made lots of big predictions about him that didn't come true. At the same time, he was, before he became vice president, he voted against every civil rights bill that had ever come forward. He had sided with the Southern Democrats the entire time. So again, he's unpredictable. And what he was doing the entire time when it came to civil rights, it wasn't that he had a deep conviction about keeping black people safe or doing something to make them to make their lives easier. He was making a political calculation that this is a rising population, that the Democratic Party is moving in this direction, and if I don't move in this direction, I'll be left behind and I'll be out of politics. So that's what he's doing. He's a pragmatist, and that's a pretty good thing to be as a president, I guess. It doesn't make you necessarily a good person. The only reason he really gets behind civil rights at a certain point, the movie explains, is that he was upset about his black cook. His black cook, he asked her to take his dog from Washington, D.C. to Texas for him driving, and she said she couldn't do it. And the reason she couldn't do it was there are a few places in between Washington, D.C. and Texas where a black woman could safely get out of her car and stand at the side of the road waiting for a dog to go to the bathroom without somebody coming along and arresting her for no reason, or for harassing her or hanging her, for that matter. She couldn't safely do that. There were places she couldn't go, miles upon miles where she couldn't go to the bathroom because there was no black person bathroom. There was no, and that resonated with him. Now, why he didn't apply that same standard to black people he didn't interact with every day? I mean, again, that's a commentary on the kind of person he was. The movie, at the very least, it makes you think about those questions, and it makes you think about him as a person, and it makes you think about racism. I came away really just still completely baffled by racism. I don't understand hating people because of the color of their skin, and I can't rationalize it in any way. Not that I want to, but I want to try and understand what it is that somebody feels superior because they're white.
If you don't understand it, it's hard to have the conversation with them to make them understand. Yeah. So that's why we never get there, because you can't. It's hard to wrap your head around it.
Because theirs is such a nonsense opinion. It really is. Superior. I mean, thinking you're superior because you're white is a nonsense opinion. It doesn't make any sense.
Just like every other kind of prejudice, right? I mean, there's an indoctrination that occurs, followed up by the sense that you're being logical and explaining how you feel. I've come across that every day if you're on social media with somebody trying to explain their reasons away with whatever the case may be, and to the point of saying, like, equality is dangerous. That was a line that was presented to me this week. So, of course it's fuzzy.
But in a neat way, he related to that, his cook's experience, because he had to have that one-on-one interaction and was able to get there, and that's why it resonated with him.
But it was only his selfish self-interest at heart, though. I mean, when racism inconvenienced him, that's when he noticed it. I mean, the man was in his 60s.
Right, but I mean, that's kind of my point. It has to, for the people that are full-blown racist, it would have to somehow get in. It would have to cross their path in that sense in order for them to really get it.
It's like the same. I'm sorry, the same kind of question of the people that would say, well, homosexuality is a sin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then somebody coming upon them and saying, well, what if your daughter was this, or what if your son was? Okay, it's the same kind of for lack of a better term, a mind fuck for somebody that can't get it out of their head. You need to break that cycle of something with a very daring idea. I think that's what you're going for here.
I mean, at the very least, it doesn't hide that about him. Certainly this is a movie that is that it is intended to kind of burnish the legend of LBJ a little bit. He comes off as kind of a kooky racist uncle. Because he is still got a little bit of that Southern racism in him, but he's also that pragmatist who can see the value of being on the opposite side of the racists. And so it's interesting that they don't let him escape that, but they do say that he's heroic because he did push through civil rights.
I have two questions. One is Oliver Stone pissed he couldn't make this movie. He's done every other president. And two, did LBJ order pants?
He did. Oh, God, he did. Yes, that scene is in the movie.
It's in the movie?
Oh, yeah. And it's as uncomfortable as the actual audio. He does use the word bunghole.
No, the only reason I heard about that was because who was on the Nerdist with Chris Hardwick? Bruce Campbell. And Chris Hardwick just pulls it up and shows it to Bruce Campbell on the podcast. And they listen to it. And then, shortly thereafter, Sean's like, LBJ's coming this weekend. So I went and found it on YouTube instead. Wow, they put that in the movie. That seems like a mistake. Because it's kind of a viral thing, I guess, on its own. But
yeah, no, it's right there in full glory of the movie. The full speech. Woody Harrelson's quite good. I would say that Bryan Cranston's LBJ was much more impactful. I bought into him more as LBJ for the HBO movie that he did. But Woody Harrelson does a good enough job. He melts into the role well enough. But like I said, this is a movie that makes LBJ kind of come off like your kooky racist uncle. He says all these horrible things, and may believe some of those horrible things, but he does the right thing in the end. So you kind of appreciate him. You can't be mad at him because he does. In the end, he does say the nice thing, and he does do the nice thing.
And that's why he cast Woody Harrelson.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
American Psycho. Mila Kunis was on American Psycho 2, so we figured that's the connection this week, right?
Yeah. No. Lesson Zero came out this week in 1987, and so Bret Easton Ellis became the theme, and American Psycho with Christian Bale came out in 2000, directed by Mary Harron and written by Mary Harron and Quinn Turner. So it's interesting to see this very male character taken on by two female creators. That was really interesting, and their take is fascinating. What they bring out of Christian Bale in this performance is remarkable. It is a stunning performance, like a full body performance. Christian Bale was incredible. I don't know why this didn't make him the superstar that he now is beyond me, because he is so remarkable in this movie. He is both terrifying and fascinating. You cannot take your eyes off him, but he is awful. And it's fascinating to watch. This is a movie that really takes on something that I think Ellis doesn't get enough credit for, because I think there are elements about him that aren't very good.
Right.
but he did have a very strong eye for I would say much stronger eye for what was wrong with the 1980s than say like Oliver Stone. Everybody credits Oliver Stone for that greed is good shit. This is the guy who really got to that. This is the guy who really deconstructed that with this character. He deconstructed that 80s mentality.
As a kid, no less.
Yeah. He does a far better job than anybody has done of deconstructing that ludicrous yuppie climber thing. He took that apart better than anybody. He deconstructs that brilliantly. And maybe that could also be Mary Harron and Quinn Turner's influence as well in the script. But the book does that as well. I mean, the book is strangely more episodic than the movie. The movie is much more straightforward a movie. But both of them take apart that caricature brilliantly.
Yeah, when I saw this, I was kind of like a VP of the University Union Board movie staff, and we were a part of this thing where we got to preview or screen films for students for free as long as they showed their ID, and this was our first movie. And wow, like, okay, not only do we have a massive crowd for this, there were so many people that got up in the middle of this and left. And the reason I say that's important is because the studio wanted, as they did with all of these screenings, to get everyone's input after the film. What did they think of it prior to its theatrical release, so they could get an idea tracking-wise of how it was going to do. It was hard to do that because we left so many surveys unfinished. And the general response was extremely negative, except the few of us, like myself, who was laughing their asses off the entire time. Now, I find this to be one of the great comedies of all time, and I know that sounds odd because I'm sitting here as a guy who loves to say that awful people in movies should not be celebrated. But what's different about this for me, and this is going to be the key to my argument, you can agree with me or not, is that this film never makes an assumption that we should like Patrick Bateman in any way, shape, or form. I would argue that at some point The Sopranos, The Godfather, all of those type of movies that I've bemoaned in the past, at some point in the movie you can say, this looks like a Regal situation. This is honorific in its presentation of mobster life, etc. Whether it be the music, whether it be the way that they present the glamorous nature of what they're doing. I'm making a poor argument because I'm looking at you and it just bothers me that I can't make it, because you're rightfully skeptical. Because I've said this so many times, but if you look at him, you know he's ridiculous from the moment he starts speaking. He gets concerned about business cards and the structure and whatnot of the font. I'm down with the understanding of font on cards and stuff like that, but his materialistic nature is so inanely ridiculous. He goes through the list of what he does to his body in the morning, and it's like, dude, enough. I mean, I can't handle it. It's so amusing. Deconstructing adult contemporary music throughout the film. There's nothing to deconstruct. It's populist. Shut up. That's hilarious to me. And he's doing it all while harming people. Is he really harming them? I still have a bit of a problem thinking that he actually did any of the things that he is purported to have done in the film.
Mary Harron has said that she intended it to be a little bit vague, but that he did kill people.
Okay. Well, I did watch the featurette on my DVD trying to figure out, like, because I'd never seen Mary Harron before. I didn't know anything about her, and I was thinking, well, maybe if I watch the featurettes finally, after 16 years of owning it, I'll get some insight into it. Not really. It pretty much presented how I thought it would be. And if you look at all of the slick stars in this film that we know now, like Josh Lucas, Justin Theroux, Jared Leto, slick back hair, their business cards, and their suits, and they're all vice presidents. Every one of them is vice president of Pearson Pierce. They're all awful, and I'm laughing at them, and I think the film understands that there's a distance between giving them an honorific and showing them as desirable characters and what the film presents them as. That's the dynamic there that I enjoy about this, that I can't really get enough of. I mean, watching this for the first time in a decade, I just found myself right back in that frame of mind of grinning at everything. It's such a dynamic performance by Christian Bale. I mean, you just can't take your eyes off of him. It's like the Joker in a way.
He's incredible. I mean, that scene you talked about where they're talking about the business cards, you watch his face and he starts to sweat.
Yes.
Like, he gets a big vein going in his forehead and he begins to sweat. Like, that is incredible acting. It's just, how did you even manage to get into that headspace? That is incredible.
Just said, hang out with Tom Cruise and become Tom Cruise. And so we hung out with Tom Cruise for a week and literally turned into Tom Cruise as a killer.
That's not a bad...
I mean, yes. He's got the hair. Everything is very...
And then he's so crazy at one point that he's literally like skipping around the room as Huey Lewis in the News is playing in the background.
Yeah, I looked up Bret Easton Ellis's opinion of this movie in Less Than Zero, and unlike Stephen King, he has a more reasonable opinion of the movies. And his main complaint with the movie American Psycho is that the unreliable narrator is not obviously unreliable until maybe the end. But in the book, I guess it's way more noticeable, kind of more in the that Seth Rogen movie vein where it's kind of what's the name of that movie? The Seth Rogen and Anna Faris movie.
Oh God, yeah.
Whatever that was called. We'll figure that out later.
One of our favorite movies.
Yeah.
We can't remember the name of it.
But in this movie, he doesn't come off as an unreliable narrator at all. But it doesn't affect my liking of. I mean, I can everything he's found wrong with it, which wasn't even that he didn't dislike. He just didn't think it needed to be made. It still didn't make me like it any less. I don't know. I could agree with him, but still like the movie. It's easy and hard to watch at the same time. I have a friend who hates rated R movies. Favorite actor of all time is Christian Bale, largely due to Newsies, and then grew from there. Watches everything he does. Loves this movie. Insists he didn't kill anybody, of course, but can watch this movie with all the sex and violence and that's going on. And I think that's a testament to the direction and the acting by Christian Bale. Yeah. And I think with Less Than Zero, we'll get to that too, but really there's just performances that kind of save movies and make them better than they necessarily need to be. Anything else on American Psycho?
I think it's incredibly underrated, and by virtue of that, some films that are known over time as being a part of the culture, you'll see that in the way that they release things on home video, be it VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, etc. There's a couple of versions on DVD of this film. There's one version on Blu-ray, and none of them have been mastered in a superior video quality. It's like a transfer of standard definition from one format to the other. What that tells me, not only did Lionsgate not have a whole lot of faith in the movie, perhaps because of the same reasons that I was talking about, people walking out of screenings, not understanding what this film was doing. Perhaps it was a little ahead of its time for whatever reason and what it was saying. I don't know if it can be considered a classic because it hasn't stayed as part of the pop culture. Despite Christian Bale being a huge, recognizable face now, he's Batman to people. He's not necessarily Patrick Bateman, at least is in my experience. He's not.
Well, people assume it's trashy. They assume right off the bat that this is a trashy movie.
Psycho,
it's not.
perhaps.
Right, and also, but there's also the sequel to deal with. Lionsgate put out that sequel. Essentially, they just turned it into straight-to-video trash. I mean, they damaged the legacy of what they had because they really didn't know what they had.
And I think at one point, Oliver Stone was going to make this movie.
God.
With Leonardo DiCaprio. Well, Roger Ebert's review, I read that, and he said pretty much what you just said. He goes, in the hands of anybody else, specifically a male, but Oliver Stone no less, this is just a trashy horror film, or kind of like the Mila Kunis
It would have
movie.
turned it into Natural Born Killers.
Right, and I'll be honest, I get the metaphor with this movie and what Sean was saying, but other than that, there's still parts where I'm just kind of like, well, why would you do it this way? Like, I really could sit there and ask a bunch of questions, but it's entertaining enough for me that those questions just don't matter. Like, so there's part of me, like kind of in Mulholland Drive, where I don't know that I totally get it. I get the metaphors and stuff, but I don't know that I totally get the movie, but I still like it, kind of thing.
These handsome, faceless white guys, all with the same job and the same obsessions. It's just a perfect deconstruction of that ridiculous 80s mindset about just accumulate everything, and that's all that matters. That's the only thing that matters in the world. The way that everybody just lets these guys get away with everything because they can't tell the difference between any of them, and nobody has an identity, and that is a lot of really big ideas.
Yeah, Jared Leto mistaking Christian Bale for Marcus Halberstram over and over and over again, and almost getting away with the movie because he was at the place, the alibi that the detective provides for him. He doesn't even know his own alibi.
Is strangely kind of similar or influential on this is kind of Vampire's Kiss, the Nicolas Cage movie. You can kind of see like elements of what Christian Bale's doing in what Cage did. Only Cage takes it like completely over the top, screamingly over the top. You can sense like a similar, like slightly more controlled version with what Kristen Bale's doing.
And I will say there's part of me hating it a little bit because Josh tried to tear Godfather down. And
Did I provide
to
a
boost this up?
reasonable enough
No.
explanation?
Well, here's why. I've never watched that movie and thought, they're praising him. I understand why you would think that because of the fan, a certain fan base that might do that to those characters, specifically Scarface. But I never really got that out of The Godfather.
I've been open for years now about the fact that I don't have any real good arguments. I only have emotional arguments as it was presented to me this week on various social media platforms as well. So knowing that and knowing that I put things on films all the time, I have no real deconstruction of why I like one more than the other. I never will have a rational point on this show.
But we both, I think Josh and I both on occasion will use one movie and pull it down to pull a movie up, kind of, you know what I'm saying? We both do it.
Yes.
And usually when I'm doing it, I'm trying to take a shot at one of you as well. That's probably the difference between me and Josh.
It's that distrust and tension that makes this show so
Put your top 5. Who's your top 5?
Normally I'd wait till the movie that inspired the top 5, but just because I want to get to 87 as a whole, a Less Than Zero soundtrack was made up of nothing but cover songs, or for the most part, pretty much cover songs. Some of the worst cover songs of all time, some of the best. But because of that, we thought we'd do cover songs in movies, and we did get one submission, and it was from Cousin Jeff, not Uncle Jeff. He had Richard Cheese's cover of Down with the Sickness from the Dawn of the Dead remake. I forgot about that. That was really funny. Marilyn Manson's cover of Sweet Dreams from Trick or Treat. Hole's cover of Gold Dust Woman from The Crow, City of Angels. The Most cover of Kids in America from Clueless. Gary Jules' cover of Mad World from Donnie Darko. And the Bangles cover of Hazy Shade of Winter from Less Than Zero. Oh, and then he had Whitney Houston's cover of I Will Always Love You from The Bodyguard. Where's mine at? I did 6. Honorable mention, Paint It Black by Gob from Stir of Echoes. I like that. Hotel California by the Gypsy Kings. The Big Lebowski, number 5. 4, Hazy Shade of Winter by the Bangles. 3, Mad World by Gary Jules. 2, Girl You'll Be a Woman Soon by Urge Overkill from Pulp Fiction. And then number 1, Come Together by Aerosmith from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the worst movie of all time.
I had number 5, Urge Overkill from Pulp Fiction. Hard Sun by Eddie Vedder and Corin Tucker, covering Indio in Into the Wild. Number 3, Everybody's Got to Learn Sometime, Beck covering the Corgis and Eternal Sunshine. Number 2, Emotional Rescue by St. Vincent, covering the Rolling Stones in A Bigger Splash. And Hotel California by the Gypsies from Big Lebowski, my favorite movie of all time.
I did formulate a 5 list since we've begun the show, and it's much weaker than the 2 musically inclined people on this show. But number 5 would be Heart of Gold. It's a cover of Neil Young's song by Damaris from Out of the Furnace. If anyone has heard that, probably not. Anthony Hamilton and Marsha Ambrosius covering Stevie Wonder's song As from The Best Man Holiday. Number 3, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away by Eddie Vedder from I Am Sam. Sorry, I said it again.
Stop mentioning that movie.
In fairness, the soundtrack was better than the movie.
Anything is better than that movie.
Number 2 would be a song called Love More by Daniel Hart. It was in the movie Comet. It's a cover of a song by Sharon Van Etten, and it's much better than the original, so that's a rare occasion. And number 1, Sexual Healing by Jack Black and High Fidelity at the end. That's a hell of a cover.
Nice.
Ray, this is 1987. Did you know that a girl can be whatever she wants to be?
I know. My mom's a plumber.
That explains a lot about you, Ray.
Assuming we stay with Less Than Zero, since we just did American Psycho and then the top 5, I watched this one this week.
Oh, wow.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah, that's why I watched it. I went searching for American Psycho and I saw Less Than Zero. I'm like, hey, I'm going to watch that.
I kind of rediscovered Less Than Zero for myself this week because I've always kind of, I don't know why I've never really taken the time to give it a close look, but this week I did, and what I found is that this isn't a movie that isn't really about anything, but it's about. But it is a proper. Again, this is what Alice does. He deconstructs a moment in time, and what he does is he deconstructs drug culture in Los Angeles in the '80s, and he does so in a very insightful and very fascinating way. I was really impressed by the performance, especially of Robert Downey Jr., of course. But I really liked. I was really moved more by the idea of the movie, the looking closer at the culture of Los Angeles at that time, and how drugs were supposedly making the party better, but really weren't doing anything. I mean, everybody thought they were having a good time, and that's what drugs convinced all these people, that they were having a good time, when really they weren't doing anything. And you have that counterpoint that is McCarthy, who's walking through all this, and it's like he's wandering through zombies that aren't killing him. You know, it's this whole culture of zombies that are around him, and they're not reacting to him in any way. And that dynamic is fascinating, and it's well made, and it's I don't know if the movie necessarily has a real center to it, or a real like a lasting idea behind it, but I'm impressed by the way that it captures a moment in culture, and especially that specific culture. I thought that was very good.
Yeah, this is the first time I'd seen it and had been interested in it for quite some time, and there's a bit of, for whatever reason, notoriety behind it. Don't know what I read, but it was in my head as something rated R, you should definitely see it. It's about drugs. Okay, fine. Robert Downey Jr. is really something else in this movie. I mean, I found myself wondering, is this pre-Robert Downey Jr. downfall, or is this the film that maybe set him on a particular course? I don't know if either of them are related.
I think it was right in the middle. I don't think he was quite to the bottom, but he was on his way.
It certainly seems like there's only one guy that could have played that particular role at this particular time, and having looked back on it 30 years from now, it's interesting to see the role that character takes and how he was able to become more of like the Clay character than the Julian character. But the friendship between Julian, Clay, and Blair is an interesting dynamic. Clay kind of wants to help Blair escape this vapidness of Los Angeles, and you had a really good analogy there of walking through zombies that aren't trying to kill him. That's if you go to a party and I thought they were phone booths at first. And no, they're all just booths where everyone is doing lines. And for something to be that readily available and that just, gosh, it almost becomes, it's not interesting anymore if it's that readily available, right? There's something of like a dangerousness to doing drugs or whatnot, that I'm doing it, but nobody else in the room is doing it, right? And that seems to be lacking here. And so it kind of opened my eyes to how prevalent this was. And is Ellis saying that the vapidness of doing drugs and the culture of drugs at that time is kind of representative of all of society in the 80s up until that point? I don't know if that's what he was trying to say, but I kind of got that from the film. Not because of the covers. Okay, that leads me to something else. Not that the covers are necessarily bad or the original songs are bad. But
Poison cover is pretty bad.
The what now?
The Poison cover is pretty bad. The Rock
They took
and
an
Roll
already
Night.
bad song and made it worse.
It was a good song. No, they took an anthem. You can't call an anthem a bad song.
I can.
An overplayed song.
I can.
It's 50,000 people a night are going to see that
care.
song. It doesn't make it bad. But Poison ruined it even more. So anyway, continue. It was awful.
I was thinking, though, of the choice to do covers for this is like, once again, taking something that was pure and making it vapid. Not that the covers are vapid themselves, but making them pop tunes as opposed to folksy or something like that coming out of their parents' culture. This is their culture, and it's pop music and clubs every night and parties every night, and they don't really know what they're doing. Like, you've got two people, two of the main characters don't know what to do with their life. One of them is drinking 2 bottles of champagne after high school graduation for some reason, which I didn't understand at all. But it is high school graduation, right? I mean, they do say that at the beginning of the film. But
they were all rich kids. I mean, from what I understand, and I haven't read the book, this movie and the book are nothing alike. I think the book takes on more of kind of what Sean's saying, more that Hollywood culture, the LA culture, and the movie takes on the drug culture a little more than. I think the drugs are in the book, but I don't think it's taking on. I don't think it's making a statement on drugs based on what I've read about what Easton Ellis has said about it.
None of the dialogue in Lesson Zero is actually in the book.
Oh,
some of the characters aren't even there. It's not. And I think what was the main Andrew McCarthy's character's name?
Clay.
He does drugs in the book. So so it just doesn't. I don't think he's making the movie's its own thing. Just kind of shares the name, but I don't know. I liked it. I think the way they kill off Downey Jr. I don't really think that's how you die. When you're usually you stop doing it for a while and you go back. And I don't know, that was kind of weak. But at the same time, at the time, you don't necessarily kill off a character like that in movies all the time either. So in a way, it was ballsy. In another way, it was.
It felt necessary. It felt like to stick that landing, a happy ending was not the thing that this movie needed. It needed that to end that way. It needed to end in some kind of sorrow. Even as Clay is able to take his girlfriend away from all of that, it still needed that tragedy to make that more effective. I think this film now kind of plays a little bit as a kind of a great deconstruction also of the culture of baby boomers who are just so obsessed with status and so obsessed with making things look nice and pretending that there wasn't any problems. There's another thing that this movie grasps brilliantly, and right in the middle of it too, which usually you don't get that kind of look at the culture while it's happening. You get that later on. You get it 20 years later when somebody goes back to their childhood and revisits it and deconstructs it. This is right in the midst of all this happening, this obsession with the baby boomers have rejected everything that they said that they valued and are now just are completely ignorant of what's happening behind them. And this movie captures that beautifully. The children are not being watched at all. The parents just hand them money and just hope for the best.
Yeah,
don't get me started on that one.
and I mean, it specifically goes after like the rich white baby boomers, but I think it's still deconstructing that generation as a whole. But this movie specifically is about the rich white ones. And
there's a line that really encapsulates that. Clay asks Blair, "Are you happy?" And she says, "Am I happy? Well, but do I look good?" That's it right there. It's like the whole movie in one line.
That's the whole 80s line. I mean, when you think about it, you go back to those like Kelly LeBrock commercials.
Yeah, don't hate me because I'm beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, that vapidity, that obsession with what looks good, and the emptiness in that idea. This movie, again, brilliantly captured. I also got to talk about the cinematography. I know Ebert is one of the champions of that, and he's right. This is absolutely a fantastic-looking movie. And the way that McCarthy stands out throughout these scenes, that's another aspect of it that's really interesting, is that specifically they use his height as well as the way he dresses just to set him apart. He's all, even though there's other people who are dressed with a tie and whatnot, but he seems to stand apart from everybody. He stands up straight. He's constantly surveying the room, whereas everybody else has their head down. It's a very specific way of separating the Clay character from the rest of the characters, and again, using him as a commentary on what you're seeing.
Yeah. On top of that, he's the only one without a gob of hair product. I mean, Spader has got the entire bottle in his hair in this movie.
But he also was amazing in this movie.
Oh yeah,
I mean, he played himself, but he's played that character a lot, and this was as good as any of them. And I really liked, and I don't know if it was good at the time or if it's just good. I really thought Jamie Gertz was good in it because when she was on drugs, she just seemed different than when she wasn't. Like you could know, and I don't know if that was just bad acting at the time and it just kind of worked out, or if it was brilliant acting at the time.
Well, it's definitely a different Jamie Gertz performance than I had seen in any other Jamie Gertz film, including things like Solar Babies and whatnot.
And
I think you point out something very interesting about, again, the way that they employ their characters, to the way, the differences. Like I said, with McCarthy standing apart, Gertz stands apart in her own way.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean it's a unique movie from. I mean I don't. Yeah. The cover songs. I don't think you'd really notice any of them other than the Poison Kiss song. I don't think none of them are really big hits.
Hazy Shade of Winter was a pretty big hit.
But it was a bigger hit for the Bengals than it was for Simon and Garfunkel, wasn't it?
Well, yeah.
Well, that's what I meant. I mean, I know that because that was a huge hit. But I meant the original songs you wouldn't necessarily notice they're doing other than.
And I honestly think that song is extraordinarily well employed in the movie.
Oh yeah. And I like it better than the original. What else we got in '87?
Well, there's actually a lot, and I'll try and get through the stuff that I've seen really quickly because I know that you've got thoughts on a couple as well. Two movies that are very similar in that they deal with life after death. The one that's vapid and I don't want to necessarily focus on is Hello Again. It's a Shelley Long comedy vehicle. She's a character that chokes to death. I haven't seen this since the theater, and I caught a little bit of it this week. I think it's a meatball she chokes on. Like, that's what I'm remembering the most about the movie, okay? But another time where Shelley Long was kind of being forced into the public's eye as she's no longer Diane. She's now a movie star, and she never really caught on as a movie star. She's got good comedy chops. We've seen it before in movies like Night Shift, Down and Out in Beverly Hills. I think she can play these comedy roles really well, but there's not a lot of variance to them, including this movie, which is forgettable and just another in the slate of movies about life after death.
She's shrill and obnoxious, and it's treated as if that's funny, and it's just not.
Yeah, and her sister's even more shrill than she is. The one that she plays something of a gypsy that brings her sister back to life.
I really
character, it's not very good.
My mom loved it, though, so what do I know?
Go figure. And the other one, which is just on the complete opposite end of events, is called Made in Heaven. And I watched this movie in anticipation because it's one of my girlfriend's favorite movies, self-proclaimed, okay? And so, therefore, I took it upon myself to take this really seriously and not... It's a love story with Kelly McGillis and Timothy Hutton, and it's the 80s, and so it's going to be cheesy. In a way, this is really, really sweet. The film isn't a standard type of film. It's... And I know that you could be seeing this as me pumping up the film for my benefit.
God, you took my joke away. That's not fair.
Good. I'm learning your game.
It's like watching Thor. You knew the joke before it came.
Finally.
Once he anticipates it.
Honestly, though, it's an ethereal film that at its heart is very sweet. Timothy Hutton has died in like the 1950s, and he goes up to heaven where he sees his family, etc. And there are some people that can go back and be reincarnated. There are some that are fresh souls, where Kelly McGillis is a fresh soul. She's his guide as well, and they develop a romance in heaven. Now, this is not treated like super cloudy, everyone's living in their own cloud in heaven type of thing. It's a reality-based situation, and reminded me a lot of the way that What Dreams May Come play, in that whatever you think of becomes the next scene that you're involved in, and whatever your mind can put to it becomes your experience in heaven. That's something we saw taken a little more seriously, of course, in What Dreams May Come. This is light and airy and ethereal and very sweet. I enjoyed it. It's very watchable, if you ask me, because I'm sitting there for an hour and 40 minutes, and if I hated it, I would tell you, and I told her too, listen, no offense, but if I dislike this, I'm going to be honest with you, that's the best way that I can watch a film that you would consider your favorite. That's the only way to do it. So it's an honest review. I like it and would watch it again. Uh-oh. Bring it.
He ruined the joke. I mean... He used words like sweet and watchable. That means it's okay.
Like, sweet is the only thing that I can really pinpoint on it, though. It can be sexy because there's a couple of like love scenes or whatnot, and you can see their bare bodies, so to speak, and so they take it seriously. But with their feelings for each other and their chemistry, you can feel it. It's not something that's totally vapid and unromantic like a Katherine Heigl film.
How was Kelly McGillis' shoulder? Just
covered.
Either completely covered or completely uncovered, not halfway or 3/4.
I went deep for that reference.
Some of our longtime listeners will know the reference.
Yes. Oh, let's move on to something Sean has seen now. I'll totally reverse it with Death Wish 4, The Crackdown.
So sweet. Such a sweet movie.
And ethereal, too.
And watchable.
No, and no. This movie, why? How? There's still another one of these to come. There's still a fifth Death Wish. How did they get to 4? How is it possible? This guy's killed thousands of people by now. Thousands of these killed. How? Why? What is happening? This is ridiculous. Bronson is so bored. He does not care anymore about Paul Kersey. He doesn't care. He has no investment. And why anybody spends any time with Paul Kersey, all that's going to happen is you're going to end up dead. Everybody who meets Paul Kersey dies. The people he loves, the people he hates, he's the only one who lives. Like, just stay away from Paul Kersey. He's cursed. The man is cursed. Stay away from him.
Ooh, it's not just a clever name.
He's terrible. I
can't wait for this remake.
Globus. I mean, these guys they don't care. He doesn't care. Nobody cares. There's no investment. And then to top it all off, the screenwriter has the gall, the unmitigated gall, to mention that he thinks, well, what this was inspired by Yojimbo. Fuck you! It was inspired by Yojimbo.
That should have been our classic this week.
Asshole. God. Just admit that you wrote a Death Wish movie, you jerk.
Is it basically, it's just body count, right? Violence for the sake of violence.
Yeah.
I mean, did the first one have a point to it back in the day? Because I haven't seen any of these. So
The first one's always the best.
The first one is just, it's about vigilante justice. It's about a guy whose daughter is murdered, and he sets about murdering the people who murdered her. And you take his side because he's sad.
Yeah, and now Eli Roth's going to knock it out of the park, and I can't wait for that episode, just because I like to watch Sean suffer on occasion.
Classic,
it's
the
like,
original?
It's like the, yeah. It's a combination of everything Sean loves in one movie. Adam Sandler's going to have a cameo.
If it were Gerard Butler playing Paul Kersey, then yes, maybe.
Oh, Adam Sandler and Gerard Butler both pop up at some point. Katherine Heigl's in it. Anyway, Josh.
No, that's okay.
Keep the podcast moving.
There's a film called Ruskies that I know I've seen this, and so I'm going to rely on memory here through your review. Joaquin Phoenix, Whip Hubley are in it, and kids that uncover some sort of plot, spy plot.
It's free on Amazon Prime.
Is it really? Oh, mother Jesus.
Ruskies is the story of a couple of kids who live on an army base in Florida, and they find a couple of Russian guys one Russian guy specifically, but there are 3 of them who come off of a ship, and they're looking for some kind of device that they want to take back to Russia via submarine. The Russian that they find, Misha, played by Whip Hubley, turns out to be a really nice guy who, didn't really want to be a communist. He's just sort of there. And they go on a little adventure with him where they just have one of those montage-heavy days where everybody's taking pictures together, and then they ride rides, and then they have junk food, and now we're friends, and blah, 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 and I don't care. And I just want to... I did like... the only thing that really appealed to me, and Bob will love this, the jetpack from Jetpack Madness is in this movie.
Really?
You actually get to see the legendary jetpack from the Dollop Jetpack Madness because they used the actual jetpack in this movie. And so I actually got to see it. And I even get to see it... a version of it gets sunk underwater, which is also another aspect of that they talk about. And I wonder if maybe this is actually where the jetpack is. That was really the thing I took away from this, was just Jetpack Madness from the Dollop.
It's just a sweet Cold War movie.
Yeah, the Dollop is another podcast that at least Sean and I listen to. I don't know if Josh does or not.
I've heard about it so many times, but I only have enough time to listen to our show.
Yeah, because we go an hour and a half now.
Jetpack Madness is the singular greatest episode of the Dollop, and really, it is like it is like listening to two guys create a Coen Brothers movie while you're listening to it. It really should be a Coen Brothers movie. That's how just crazy this thing gets. And it's all about a jetpack.
To finish up, we've got 3 films, one starring Denzel Washington called Cry Freedom. I have not seen this particular one and did not have time to watch it.
I saw it years ago, and it's a very good movie. It's a very respectable movie. It's not a very memorable movie.
Okay. Also, Steel Dawn with Patrick Swayze, and it's in a post-apocalyptic world.
Is this a sequel to Red Dawn?
See, that's what I was thinking, naturally. But didn't Patrick Swayze perish in Red Dawn?
That's true.
Now he's back as Steel. I don't know.
he's been reborn and rebuilt as a Terminator in the future.
Yeah, they come back. Jason comes back.
We wrote a much better movie here.
Hey, I haven't seen the movie. Maybe that is the movie. We don't know.
But reading the description of it, it seems like Patrick Swayze getting a chance to make Mad Max on a really low budget. It seems like something that should be...
Mad Max was a pretty low budget.
Well, okay, we're talking like Golden and Globus budget. That's what I got from just looking at the poster, the trailer, etc. And last but not least, a John Cryer movie called Hiding Out. It appears that he's hiding out.
It's not a bad movie. It's very watchable. It's a very watchable comedy.
Is it sweet?
I have a bad association with it because I was on a bad date when I saw it, but I did enjoy it. I did watch it many times as a young man.
You were on dates in 1987?
No, years later.
Okay, never mind.
He is older than us.
Well, but like...
I was at least a year away from dating in '87.
I literally turned 8 when this movie came out.
Yeah.
No, '87. I was 11. My first girlfriend was 11. So.
No, I mean November 6th is my birthday, so I literally turned 8 when that movie came out.
Happy pre-birthday tomorrow.
That wasn't what I was going for with this. I'm going to cut all this out of the podcast because we got. But that's all the movies, right?
If you want to give Bob a gift,
I promise that's all.
Just give us a review on iTunes.
Yeah,
that's right.
That would be a great gift.
Yeah, just go in there, write happy birthday and 5 stars.
Yes, and go to the other podcasts that are ahead of us and go to their podcast and give them 1 star and tell them why they suck.
And link to us.
If they get looked at, though, they go up too, even if they get a bad review. Just ignore them. The Simpsons parlance, just don't look.
Next week, we've got Murder on the Orient Express and Daddy's Home 2. So I'm looking forward to
And there may be
both
others.
those.
I mean, there are other things that are moving out wide, but
those
we didn't know about LBJ this week. So.
Those are the blockbuster releases that are coming out. Yeah, there could be more.
I have heard that The Disaster Artist may be here December 1st.
Nice.
Just something I know we're interested in.
My daughter actually laughed at the trailer before Thor. I think that was the highlight of the movie before. Although that was, I mean, they swear in the trailer, which I was kind of shocked at. Yeah, I was like, Josh is not going to be happy about this.
It wasn't in the series of trailers before I saw Thor, and I saw all of them. But they did include Den of Thieves for whatever reason, with all of the gun violence and everything. I'm like, what are you doing playing before?
I mean, you did watch the movie where they blew up a planet.
It's a realm, Bob.
That may be the nerdiest thing you've said so far.
Whoa. Actually, this is the anniversary of I saw on Facebook when I posted that conversation about Harry Potter you guys had. That was like a year ago today.
I wish you'd have shared that.
So that means our classic is Murder on the Orient Express. We'll just knock both those out. And then our top 5 will be movies on trains. So. Yeah.
And The Running Man turns 30. I'm excited to see that for the first time.
You've never seen The Running Man?
No.
Oh, wow. You're in for a treat.
Right. Pre-kindergarten cop Schwarzenegger wasn't my thing, so.
All right, but before we go, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. Our key grip is Charlie Messing. Our character actors, Corey and Josh.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our associate producer, Jason from New Mexico.
This is crazy. You want me to hit you?
That's right.
What, like in the face?
Surprise me.
Our executive producer, Uncle Jeff.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
And our movie star, Dave Seaver.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
If you want to be a Patreon supporter, ihatecritics.net/Patreon. Also, iTunes, rate and review the show, subscribe to the podcast, and otherwise we will see you next week.
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have. We're the three best friends that anyone could have. We're the three best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best three friends that anybody can have. I mean the three best friends that anybody can have. That's right, the three best friends.
Ted or Talladega Nights?
Ted.
I think I might go Talladega Nights on that one, but it's a little flop. Casino or Snakes on a Plane?
Casino.
I still haven't seen Casino. Established on this show, unfortunately.
I like Casino. So, I mean, it's not the best sport movie, but Taken or Fast and the Furious?
Fast and the Furious.
Taken.
Jerk. Oh. Well, I mean, I would take Taken, but I feel like that's not fair to Fast and the Furious. Moulin Rouge or Forrest Gump?
Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge.
Forrest Gump sucks.
Superman 1978 or Sideways?
Sideways.
Superman.
Was Sideways as well, a future classic probably. Pan's Labyrinth or Eyes Wide Shut?
Eyes Wide Shut.
Pan's Labyrinth by Hair.
I'm with you, Josh. But yeah, I need to re-see Eyes Wide Shut too. We'll have to make that another classic as well. Pinocchio or Armageddon?
Which Pinocchio?
1940.
Oh, Pinocchio.
Pinocchio.
I guess I'd probably go. I'd probably even take the modern remake of Pinocchio over Armageddon. Now that I think about it.
That was funny. My dad showed my kids Armageddon, and when the Justice League trailer, my daughter goes, "Batman kind of looks like that guy from Armageddon, from that space movie."
Yeah, you know, the funny thing is Come Together is on the Armageddon soundtrack as well as the Justice League soundtrack.
And I didn't even think about it from the Armageddon soundtrack. Yeah. It's a better movie than Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Yeah,
it
I don't
is.
think Sgt. Pepper.
Watch it
I
again.
hate Armageddon a lot.
Watch it again.
I have I Am Sam level hatred for Armageddon.
Ooh.
Dakota Fanning's okay.
Hey, and Armageddon's got a really great Aerosmith song.
No, it doesn't. Actually, it does. It does. It's just not the hit.
I know what you mean.
It's got Sweet Emotions in there, and then another one. Naked Gun, the first one. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Roger Rabbit.
Naked Gun.
No, I'll go Naked Gun. Neither one is very... Knocked Up or As Good as It Gets?
Knocked Up.
As Good as It Gets.
God damn it. I'll go with Knocked Up. I've sided with Josh enough today.
Yeah, reached my limit.
Here's a hard one. Citizen Kane or Scary Movie?
Citizen Kane.
Yes.
The Rock. Alien vs. Predator.
The Rock.
The Rock.
Really?
Yeah.
I know you know.
Alien vs. Predator is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Like,
do you own it?
Yes.
Do you own The Rock?
No. Oh, damn it. No, wait a minute. I still said The Rock. Because I know that AVP is a guilt. I said AVP as well. Oh, no. Wait, it's Alien versus Predator. Strike this from the record.
The Bourne Identity or Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers?
Bourne Identity.
Two Towers. Well, we know what you're going to choose.
Well,
They're still walking in the middle of the Two Towers.
Now, if you guys disagree, we'll have to skip this one, but Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Boogie Nights. Because I haven't seen Boogie Nights yet.
Boogie Nights.
Oh man! Oh brother, where art thou? By a small margin.
Then we will not vote on that one. Speed or Meet the Parents.
Speed.
Ocean's 13 or Juno.
Ocean's 13.
I like Juno. Signs or Lara Croft Tomb Raider.
Signs.
The Hangover or Back to the Future Part 3.
The Hangover.
Back to the Future.
The Hangover. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet 96.
Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Romeo and Juliet.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So now I'm like 4 in a row against Josh. Our Idiot Brother or Waterworld.
Our Idiot Brother.
I haven't seen the Idiot Brother one. I'm not sure what this is. That is.
Paul Rudd movie.
Oh.
Jack Nicholson's in that, right?
No, that's the one he's in with Reese Witherspoon. This is...
Right.
Zoe Deschanel's in this one.
Right, that's right.
Elizabeth Banks.
Oh, yeah. I like that movie. Mean Girls or Kung Fu Panda?
Mean Girls.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Mean Girls either. Jeez, I'm awful today.
I'll take Mean Girls. It's weird to like a Lindsay Lohan movie. Hannibal or The Fifth Element?
Fifth Element.
I can't forget the Hannibal by a slim margin.
I think you and I might be the only two people who like that movie more than we're supposed to.
Yeah, it's just that whole experience of seeing that movie and not knowing anything about it and haven't read the book yet, anything like that was like, wow. I mean, it's not close to the movie The Silence of the Lambs is, but...
Yeah, but people just don't like that movie. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or Sherlock Holmes?
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Spy Kids or Beverly Hills Cop?
Say what?
Spy Kids or Beverly Hills Cop?
Beverly Hills Cop.
Beverly Hills Cop. Oh.
RoboCop 87 or Lights Out?
Which one's Lights Out?
That came out last year.
Oh God, is that the?
Where when the lights are out, that
you can only see the ghost when the lights are out or whatever.
Yeah.
What was the other choice?
RoboCop 87.
God.
You get to go out this alone. I think we're gonna step
Lights
back.
Out.
Really?
I hate RoboCop.
Yeah, but Lights Out's awful.
Lights Out. They're
no,
both awful. I've got to pick two awful choices. I'll take the less awful.
The lesser of two weevils.
All right, Mean Girls or Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me?
Mean Girls.
Yeah, I don't know.
Me too. And we're just getting repetitive. Nothing fun. So I guess we'll cut it off there. See you next week.